Hi there, welcome back to another top 5 video here with me, Jennifer Kirk on YouTube. Thanks for watching, and today we're going to do the second part of the video that we started last time, and we're going to do those top 5 diesel shunting locomotives. Number 5. Well, I've picked for the number 5 slot the venerable Hornby Sentinel diesel shunter. Now this comes in 2 different varieties thus far from Hornby, both 4-wheeled. We've got the version with the chain drive, such as this Manchester Ship Canal Company DH16 version, but also they do the rod drive on the outside, which is a slightly more powerful shunter, but the bodywork and cab are pretty much the same. But these are wonderful models, and it was pleasing to see pretty much for the first time that a manufacturer had tooled up ready to run a high quality model of an industrial only shunter. That's to say that British Railways never actually owned or operated any of these, although in more recent times these have been registered on tops in the 015 category, which has been reserved for any miscellaneous shunters that don't have their own tops categories. And the model itself is a pretty good performer. It's a very short wheelbase, but it does seem to run pretty well, although it's advisable for you to have electro frog points rather than the insel frog variety. So I've chosen this as my number 5. Now, moving on from here, there was quite a few different things that we could have picked, and it's actually been pretty close run amongst all of the different ready-to-run models. But I've ummed and ahed, and I've picked the Backman newly retooled Class 3 diesel shunter. And we can see here the main catalogue version 03066, and this is the version with the flower pot chimney, and also it's got the air tank. So this is a dual brake variety, but Backman have actually tooled up a few different versions of these. So you can have the vacuum brake only version, which doesn't have the air cylinders. They've also done the conical witch's hat type exhaust, and they've also done a cut down cab variety, which so far we've only seen in the guise of 03179 in Network Southeast livery, which was a Model Zone special commission. But they also did it as a Backman Collectors Club special in the wagon livery as Clive that it later wore when it was at the Hornsea depot. And this model itself is a really high quality tooling. Gone are the days of the mainline stroke replica railway stroke Backman model, which was leaving a lot to be desired. And instead what we've got is a fully integrated high quality model with a proper chassis, a heavy metal running plate. So this locomotive does run exceptionally well. It's DCC ready. It comes with a 6-pin socket inside, and actually I have seen people manage to fit these with sound, although you have to do a bit of jiggery pokery in the cab to kind of make it work. We've got the full-on representation of the jackshaft drive, and the level of detail on this is pretty stunning. Backman have announced some private owner liveries of this coming up. There's an NCB version on the cards for later this year, and they have also released a Ministry of Defence version in the Military Manoeuvres train set pack, which is still available from a number of model shops. So this was always going to make it to my top 5. It was just a question of where it was going to end up in there, and I've put it in at the number 4 slot. What could come next? Well, I decided that the Class 8 diesel shunter, available both from Backman as well as Hornby in a pretty good standard version, was one that had to make my top 5. And in this instance, after a lot of thinking and tough thinking about this, I decided that it was well worth putting in the number 3 slot. Now, this particular example is the Hornby version, When it comes to deciding which version that you want, well, you've got the choice of the Hornby versus Backman, and my view on this is that there are pluses and minuses to both of these models. They've both been tooled up to an exceptionally high standard, but as the Hornby model came after the Backman branch line retooling, they kind of had to go that little bit extra. So the finesse of the detail on the Hornby model is just that little bit further in advance of the Backman one, even down to the fact that we have opening cab doors. And it's actually, I'm just trying to, I don't know whether that's even going to show up because my thumb's sort of in the way. But these cab doors open, we've got the much finer rods, and these do tend to have a slightly better performance when being used on the layout. Being a 6-wheel chassis with all-wheel pickup, what we find with this is it works marginally better over Insulfrog points than some of the 4-wheel chassis locomotives, and it is a pretty reliable piece of kit. The price tag, though, is such that you will always find the Backman versions at a slightly lesser price. So it's really a trade-off between the better detail on the Hornby and the slightly more favourable price on the Backman. But for me, this locomotive was going to be always in the top 5, and I've put it in to the number 3 slot. It's also to be said that both Hornby and Backman have tooled up for a variety of different versions of these. So we've got different auxiliary boxes on the side. These held things such as compressors or vacuum ejectors, things like that. And there was a little bit of variety. We've also got from Backman the earlier hinge door variety and the later smaller hinges as well. And also both Backman and Hornby have released the Class 9 diesel shunter variety, which outwardly at least look fairly similar. And it should also be noted that this same body shell is suitable for a number of the other variants, such as the Class 10 and the Class 11, although you might have to shut your eyes a little bit and squint in terms of the diameter of the wheels for them to fit in there. Backman did produce as a special through Model Zone the Longmore Military Railway variety. I can never remember whether it's a Class 10 or a Class 11, so there is potential for these to be released in their industrial liveried versions, and they were sold on widely into industry. It really came down to a difficult decision here. We've had Hornby, we've had Backman, and the manufacturer which really of late has really stood out for me with the small diesel shunter market has been Helgen, and we've recently done a box opening and review of this model. And for me, it was touch and go whether this made the number 1 slot or the number 2 slot. But really, on reflection, I decided that there was another locomotive that was going to pip it to the number 1 slot. So for me, in number 2, I have the Helgen Class 7 diesel shunter. This locomotive really blew me away when I got it out and reviewed it. There are a few little niggles that I noted, namely that the buffers have a tendency to stick in. It also had crank couplings when actually that made it not quite line up with a lot of the rolling stock. And there's also been an issue with, straight out of the box, some of the pickups need a little bit of tweaking to enable this to pick up correctly off all wheels. That said, it's got a tremendous weight to it, and that helps it to run with a silky slow speed, and coupled with its immense finesse of the detail on there, this locomotive really is a very faithful representation of the Class 7 diesel shunter. Helgen have also released this in a wide variety of liveries that it's carried to date, from the original BR green with wasp stripes through the BR blue with the pre-tops number. We've also got such as this, the BR blue with tops number, and then moving on to the private owner liveries of British Industrial Sand and Oakmoor Sand, and then finally Harry Needle Railroad Company as well. There is also provision for the high-level air-piped version as well as the non-high-level piped version, so there are some detailed differences between those that are already released in the range. And I have a suspicion that Helgen will be releasing in the future some more of the private owner liveries, as well as some of the diesel hydraulic versions that were sold to, most notably, the Ministry of Defence. These locomotives, whilst they may have been a specialist class for British Rail, went on to have a very successful post-British Rail career, and 7 of these survive into preservation. So for me, this locomotive has the correct combination of the good running qualities, which is very important for a shunting locomotive, as well as the immense amount of detail. So for me, it just got pipped to the post, but I've put it in as number 2 in my list. Well, what can we have now for the number 1 slot? We're going to recap. In number 5, we have the Hornby Sentinel. In number 4, we have the Backman Class 3 diesel shunter. In number 3, we have the Hornby stroke Backman Class 8 diesel shunter. In number 2, we have the Helgen Class 7 diesel shunter. And there's a whole variety of different locomotives that I could have put into that number 1 slot. And it was a really tough decision for me to really whittle this down to just 5. But for me, the locomotive that was just that shade ahead of the Helgen Class 7 and all the other ones was actually the same manufacturer, Helgen, and this is the Class 5 diesel shunter. Now for me, this model shared a lot of the same finesse that we've come to expect from Helgen and that we've seen extensively in the Class 7 diesel shunter. But the winner for me, over and above everything else, was the silky smooth, slow speed running of this. This locomotive has consistently run without any great issue on any shunting layout that I've put it on, running over all manner of different point work. And for me, for a small shunting, ready to run locomotive, that was the most important criteria over and above detail and price. So for me, the Helgen Class 5 diesel shunter that we did a full-on box opening and review on the channel has, for me, gone in at the number 1 slot, and deservedly so. What do you think of those top 5 choices? Are they the same top 5 choices that you would have picked? I'd love to see what you would have picked for your top 5. Leave them in the comments down below and we'll take a look. But until next time, don't forget to like this video, share it too, and also you can now follow me on Instagram. Look for me as Jennifer E. Kirk. But until next time, you take very good care of yourself. It's me, Jenny Kirk, saying thanks for watching. Bye for now. Today's video has been brought to you in part thanks to the generous donation of my fans on Patreon. And a special huge thanks goes out to Anthony Kidson, Mark Anthony, Michael Churchwood and Mark McShane. If you'd like to help support the show, head on over to patreon.com/Jennifer Kirk. Thank you. Today's video has been brought to you by my books, Bringing Home the Stars, Twinkle Little Star, and also you can get the complete comic collections of All Over the House, Books 1, Books 2, and also the wacky zany Life of Knob T. Mouse. Thanks and catch you later.